Welcome to Expat Hoops. Today we talk to yet another former Mason basketball player, Cam Long. He played in Fairfax from 2007 to 2011. He then started playing professionally first in Lithuania, then in France, Germany, Romania, and Israel. He was named the Israeli League Cup MVP in 2018.
But before we talk to Cam, I want to remind you to be interactive with us at Expat Hoops. We're active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also show your support for content like this by hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, or commenting below. We also have a Patreon page, which you can find the button for that up in the corner of the YouTube page. Now, if you'll join Tony and I in welcoming Cam to Expat Hoops. Welcome to the show, Cam.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're actually going to go back a little bit further than we normally do to high school days. You played for Ahmad Dorset at Freedom High School in Woodbridge. Take us back through your recruitment and how you wound up at George Mason.
Man. Well, first of all, like Ahmad Dorset and then also Alan Johnson, both, George Mason alumni. So that kind of, was one of those things that peaked when it came to a lot of the recruitment from George Mason coming in. But just that process, I can say that my junior year was very explosive year when I started to get a lot of my attention. Firstly starting out with the AAU ball when I went and played with Boo Williams, also DC Assault. I started with DC Assault, but then finished out playing with Boo Williams and playing with teams playing with programs at that level definitely gave me a lot of exposure. So that started to draw a lot more schools in. And then once my senior year hit, early on, George Mason started coming to the games. We had an amazing breakout game where we played against Potomac High School where, we ended up winning by a buzzer beater. One of my good friends of mine on my team, Jaron Haley, was the one that actually hit the shot. And, that was one of my breakout games too. I ended up finishing that game with like 36 points or 32 points or something like that. And Coach L, Coach Cherry, and all of them actually came to that game and seen me. So for me to, show out like I did was definitely a good way to go before I end up actually attending George Mason and, doing my verbal commit. But there was a little hiccup in between that where a lot of people, I'm sure, probably don't know that story. Once I actually gave my verbal commit, I was still actually getting recruited by Virginia Tech. And Seth Greenberg was a guy that I was talking to quite often. It came down to George Mason, Virginia Tech for my final decision. And Coach L ended up talking to Seth Greenberg and finding out that I was still in talks with him and end up pulling my scholarship away at the time, my offer. And, I called and begged and he was just like, no, I'm not having it. Like, sorry, we're going to go ahead and move on and choose somebody else. And that was mind blowing. Like, I literally jumped in my truck, drove off for a little bit to clear my head. And the next day I was like, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Like, I went to George Mason to visit for a reason. And let me go ahead and call him back and show him how motivated I am to come. And next thing you know, he ended up accepting it because I showed him, how eager I was to come to George Mason and how excited and, just motivated and willing to work to go to a place like that. And that's how I ended up going to George Mason.
It's kind of interesting because I was going to say, we talked about this off the pod of like, you start going back a little bit further now. And even some of the Google research, I was trying to reconfirm sort of what I knew. I remember when you were coming out, you had a good number of offers. I can't remember specifically what the offers were, but it definitely wasn't like a foregone conclusion that like, oh, Ahmad Dorset was steering you sort of, or Mason alums were steering you or anything. You had quite a few offers.
I did. I had offers, across the entire country. Not going to really name them because like, mom took a big part of that, being close to home. And, George Mason is only 30 minutes down the street, 45 minutes, maybe max from Woodbridge, Virginia. So, if you want to just name a ballpark of some of the offers, I also have VCU, Richmond, I had a lot of letters I won't say offers, but I had a lot of letters and offer people asking me to come visit their schools, such as like Oregon, Sanford, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Tennessee. Like I had a lot of big schools. And, a lot of people will sit there and ask me, why'd you choose George Mason? My final five schools I came to decide between was George Mason, Penn State, VCU, Richmond, and then also Virginia Tech. And out of all those schools, my bond really came with Coach L and all of them. Like the connection I had with his coaches just made a big difference. And then also, hanging out with some of the players on your recruiting visit is also a big impact. And hanging out with Shaq, or following Campbell, I should say, and John Vaughn, Dre Smith, all those guys was just really good dudes. And hanging out with them that night and them taking me out and showing me around the school just overwhelmed me and made me just feel at home and feel like a part of the team already.
So obviously it's you're close by, but it certainly probably had to help that you had a coach that whatever school he went to probably doesn't really matter, but did it help that he was able to help you navigate, some of these offers and saying, who's more serious, or this is what you should be looking into as you were weighing your college choices?
Well, the good thing about Ahmad and Allen, and they never really talked to me school mindset. They talked to me about just, being a man, how you want to carry yourself once you do leave that school. Because you never know if, playing ball or going there and playing ball, if you're going to continue playing that afterwards. So the biggest thing they told me was Coach L is not going to be the guy just telling you about how to work things on basketball. He's going to teach you how to be a man. And immediately when I got there, all the rules he set, going to school, sitting in the front row, don't wear headphones, walking around campus, silly stuff, but stuff that, we really just don't take in the mindset of how much of an impact that really does have on an individual. And, that's what I could say they taught me the most. Like Coach L is going to be a guy to make you become a man once you leave that school. And out of all the other coaches, yes, there's opportunity they could teach you to be at a level where you go play professionally. But if all else fails, you want to be a man at the end of the day, not just a professional athlete.
So on that note, your tenure at Mason was quite good. You ended up making 2 NCAA tournaments while you were there, all conference team a couple of times. You go through the process of being at Mason and you look to turn pro. Walk us through the process of, you get around the time in which you considered going pro and how you coped with that and who helped you out along the way.
Whew. So, college going over to the pro was completely different. My biggest impact was my agent that I, ended up signing with because, he was trying to get everything lined up with all the teams I was going to try out for. At the very beginning of that process, it was very overwhelming, hearing from all these different agents that I had to first try to talk to and see who I want to sign with. And then just kind of understanding that you're no longer about to be on campus. Like you're about to literally be off on the streets, living your own life and trying to do what's best for yourself. And every decision you make from here on out is literally going to be life-changing. And that's something for any college kid or high school kid going into college kid becoming an actual adult, that's something that you got to really fear because you just don't want to do it the wrong way. You want to make sure you go about it the right way. Coach L and Coach Huger and all of them was definitely along the side, helping me out, telling me everything I needed to do. But again, a good group of people that made sure that you were still making your own decision. They weren't trying to lead you in any way possible. They just gave you their opinion, but made sure you still decided on your own what you want to do and what you thought was best for yourself.
And actually, before you went overseas, you did have some NBA tryouts. I know that there's video online of YouTube through the Golden State Warriors. What was the thought process like in terms of being, on NBA radars and yet still deciding that you're probably going to go overseas, or where exactly your career was going to begin?
Well, training with the guy I was training with and getting prepared for all the NBA tryouts. At that time, like I said at the beginning, I was thinking that there wasn't going to be no lockout. The year I graduated was the year of the NBA lockout. So, all the workouts that I had set up and playing, I did it with Golden State, Oklahoma City, Minnesota Timberwolves, Washington Wizards, and then also San Antonio. San Antonio, I actually did their spring camp with. So I was actually there for a week. And, that was the team I thought I was on there. Like the spring camp went amazing. I was talking to the coaches and all of them consistently. Even got to sit down with some of the players and talk to them as well. And I really thought that was going to be it. But because of the lockout, there was no, combine. There was no, summer league. None of that stuff ended up taking place. And the reason why I felt like that really affected me is because I really wasn't able to compete against guys at, those SECs, ACC type of conferences, So, yeah, once we got to the tournament, I got to show a little bit, but even playing with the injury during the tournament, I had a hip injury. I just still wasn't able to, show my talent at the fullest level I possibly could. And even during my workouts, a lot of the time when I did sign up for these teams to go work out with, we tried to focus on putting myself in the same category with a lot of the top players. But once the workout actually came, a lot of those top players dropped out. So I just never had a time to actually compete against people at, the level where, on the mock draft, they was considered as top 10 or, top, the highest picked players. So then, once all that finished and then I found out that the lockout was actually going to happen, for sure I knew it was an overseas thing coming into play. The biggest fear about that is I'm getting ready to go overseas. I'm getting ready to go across the country, a place I've never been, I never explored. Well, I'll take that back. During college, we did have the opportunity to go to Italy. But that still ain't the same because I'm literally playing and going over there with the group of guys I already played with. So, I got a team, a family that I built my entire last 3 years with. Now I'm going across the country to play with them. It's not that difficult. But actually finding myself getting ready to go to Lithuania, my first contract that I signed, first offer I even received, my agent told me that it was best for me to go ahead and take it. And I go across the water to a country I never even knew existed, had no clue where it sat on the map. And when I ended up there, hopes was high, super excited, especially when I found out one of my teammates ended up being Denzel Bowles, who was a JMU alumni. So, we played against each other multiple times and we were very familiar with one another. So that was good to come into that league with a guy I was familiar with. But still, that overseas lifestyle is not something you can prepare for when you first get out of college. It's just going to be a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah, Lithuania is a long way from Italy. I'm sure you found that out relatively quickly. So, what was that like that first year? You had a guy there that you knew for a little bit of the time that you were there. What kind of growing pains did you experience as you did your first year overseas outside of the United States?
The first thing was understanding the communication barrier. Like a lot of my teammates spoke English. We only had 2 other Americans on my team. That was Rashawn Broadus and, like I said, Denzel Bowles. So we hung out with each other quite often. But the culture shock, the food, just the way the people out there lived, how they carried themselves. Like, I had kids literally going around and eating lunch with me. I'm talking about like 5 years old, 4 years old, but walking around by themselves, no parents, no nothing. And I'm just like, how old are you? And they're like, oh, we're 5. And I'm like, and you're out here living a lifestyle like you're a grown kid? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, you're out here grabbing lunch by yourself at a random place nowhere near the school. It's like, oh, we do this all the time. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. But, and then the biggest thing for me was Lithuania was way colder than it was in Virginia or anywhere else I have ever been. There's at one point we literally had negative 14 degrees in Lithuania.
That's balmy in Lithuania.
Yeah. Oh, it was insane. Like there was one point actually have a picture on my computer where it shows the outside of the door to my building, my apartment building that I was staying in. Once you walk inside, the very inside of that first door was completely ice. And then you had to walk upstairs and everything to get to your actual apartment door. But it was insane. And that was a big adjustment I had to do and buy a whole bunch of clothes to, overcome trying to stay as warm as possible, even though I don't think it's really possible.
Yeah, only the coldest places in the U.S. even compare to the Baltics. That's the biggest shock for a lot of people that we've had play in the Baltics in various places over the year. They talked about the weather.
Right.
And also the winter, I'm sure it was quite dark there as well for most
It
of the
was.
day.
It
So,
was for sure. And then um I'm sure a lot of guys probably told you about how a lot of their coaches didn't speak English as well.
mhm.
My first coach, yeah, he had a few words that he could speak to you. But the main thing he always spoke to me was good or bad. That's all he could say, good or bad. And everything when it came to the, teaching prospect of it was literally he had to pull out a drawing board every time because that was the only way I understood where he's coming from. And he'll literally be like if you ever think about the movie Love and Basketball and you see the scene where the girl literally walks up to one of her teammates and said, "What does his coach say?" And he says, "Give the ball to you." That was almost how that year was. Like, coach says, "Give the ball to you and Denzel, and y'all go to work."
Well, how did that year? We talked a lot of stuff off the court and some of the challenges you had there. How did you grow on the court?
On the court, I mean, we had an amazing year. We literally the program has always been pretty successful. They always finish like top 5 or something like that. But that year was the first year they ever beat Zalgiris and Ritas multiple times throughout the season. We actually finished third place and probably one of the best seasons I can say they ever had. For myself personally, again, a culture shock. Like playing over there, the refs treated you completely different. The style of play is completely different. Well, I can't really say completely different to George Mason style because we always was very move the ball around, everybody go. But in Lithuania, overseas in general, it's everybody go. Like everybody's constantly moving. There ain't no standstill, put the ball in this person's hand and let them go to work. Like, no, there's always constant movement compared to a lot of like NBA leagues where it's like give the ball with him and everybody else get out the way.
Yeah, you're not doing a lot of isolation stuff
Mm-mm.
like that.
Right. Because there's
Um,
no such thing as a 3-second defensive call. Like you literally can sit there in the paint and just wait for somebody to come to you at all
just
times.
just camping, in the post.
Right.
So you go from there to Le Mans in France. Probably a bit different experience as well. Take us through your experience in France where you played in the EuroCup that year.
A lot of games. A lot of games. And the treatment and everything out there was also something that I'm sure a lot of people told you. College treatment compared to overseas treatment, there's no comparison. Like in college, they take care of you a lot more. There's ice 24/7. You got pools, there's an actual ice bath and all that type of stuff. But overseas, you're creating your own baths. Like there's been multiple times overseas I was using the trash can as my ice bath. So like even that alone was just like unbelievable. And then EuroCup, very competitive. Traveling throughout the season and going to different countries compared to different states. It's also a huge shocker. Like you think about in college, we'll leave the day before traveling for a game, stay the night, play the next day, and then travel afterwards. A lot of times overseas, you'll take a bus to the location. We're talking about 12, 13-hour bus trips and play the game the next day and take another 13, 12-hour bus trip back. So the difference with that was just insane because if you think about being on a bus for over 13, 12 hours and then have to prepare yourself to play in a game, your legs ain't always there. Like there's a huge adjustment to, stretching 10 minutes before the game is now stretching 30 minutes before the game, just trying to get yourself loose. And still at times that's not even working. So
we're
that
familiar with the concept of the 10 to 13 hour bus trip on this podcast.
Or
Usually,
even 16. 16
yes,
has been the
usually
tops.
thus far we have been mostly told that happens a lot in Poland. But you have indicated that it happens in some other places as well,
for sure.
which is a bummer, to say the least.
Right.
I imagine that, having that much travel under your legs, being on a bus the whole time. I mean, I've taken a few bus trips that are a couple hours. And I mean, you need to stretch out a little bit after that, especially if you're not on like the best of the best buses. You gotta work it out a little bit when you get there, and especially when you're expected to get off the bus and like you don't even have a day to practice. You got maybe an hour or two to prep for your game. It's a different
Right.
ball game, for sure.
Exactly. And there ain't no charter buses over there. You got
No.
these little team buses for the most part where there ain't no bathrooms or anything on the inside. So like it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all.
For sure. So from France, though, you get to go follow that up with a couple seasons in Germany for a couple different teams. And again, you get to play in EuroCup with your first club. Take us through what that experience was like as compared and contrast with France.
Very similar. Again, like you're playing for teams is very competitive. The countries that we went to was a little different than when I was in France. Can't remember exactly every country we played in for sure, because there was just so many on a consistent basis. But my year in Germany was a lot longer. We actually finished the Elite Eight in EuroCup in Germany compared to, I don't even think we made it out of the first round in France. So that season was a lot shorter compared to when I was in Germany, which allowed, I guess you could say, an easier season for the rest of the year. While in Germany, 2 to 3 games a week, again, something that takes a big toll on your body, not only physically, but mentally as well. You're just constantly thinking every day, you got to wake up, go to practice, the next day, prepare for a game, the day after that, practice again because there ain't no day off because you got to prepare for the next game. And that was literally consistent basis. We was having games sometimes Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, or, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And no day is off an entire week. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. Like a lot of people looking from the outside in will think, well, all you're doing is playing basketball. Like that's easy. No, it's not easy at all. Like if you're thinking about the wear and tear you're putting on your body consistently and having to worry about everything you eat and how much you drink every single day as well, just to make sure your body is prepared as much as it can be. It's a full-time job. It really is a full-time job. And a lot of people are unaware of that. And that's why sometimes when I talk to a lot of people and they're sitting there saying, like, if you ever decide to, like, when I gave up basketball, they're like, I don't think that's a smart decision. You're going to regret that. And I'm like, yeah, I might only play 8 years and I was making good money, but that 8 years really felt like double that because it just really is. It takes a lot on your body. And if you're not mentally and physically prepared for that at all times throughout your life, and it's not something you love on a consistent basis, because you're going to have days you're tired, but it don't matter. You're still going to have to work regardless because you got to prepare for the next day.
Going from one German club to another, was there any difference that you would say between the two? Or was there any particular reason why you decided to go back to Germany? Was it best offer available, or was it that you wanted to stick around in Germany? Because this is, I think at this point, the longest you would have stayed in one particular spot in your career to this point.
Career. The biggest thing was in between those two that year, I ended up having knee surgery. I ended up having a bone erosion under my patella, where I had to get emergency surgery. Like I played on a bad knee from the time of December all the way up until August, thinking that everything was okay. The team was telling me everything was okay. I was constantly getting treatment, getting a blood transfusion, just trying to help it recover as much as possible. And, honestly, that first year too with that team in Germany, I had a 1+1 deal, meaning that depending on how I performed, they were going to allow me to come back and play with them the following year. Well, I finished that season leading the team in scoring, second on the team in assists. And like I said, we lost in the first or second round of the playoffs to the team that ended up winning the championship. And then we made it to the Elite Eight of the EuroCup out of like 64 teams. So I felt like that was a very successful year for somebody that's, looking at me thinking like, all right, we got a 1+1 deal with this guy. Let's go ahead and keep him, follow up. Well, at the end of the season, I met with the coaches, I met with the GM, and, they were super excited to move forward. They was asking me, how can we make things comfortable for you next year? Where would you like to stay at next year? Everything was all good. Everything was ready to go. Playoffs happened. Like I said, we lost first round. I ended up tearing ligaments in my ankle the game before playoffs started. So I had a whole week to prepare for that, plus having a bad knee. So I played in the playoffs with a bad knee and tore ligaments in my ankle and still finished, you know, with the same average I had during the season in the playoffs. So I'm thinking like, they ain't that down. They ain't much more you can ask for me. There really isn't. Well, after the playoffs, I sat down with them again. They decided that they want to let me go. And I was like, wait, why? And they're like, oh, you just ain't perform at the level we expected you to. So they released me. I get home, I take a week off, because of the knee injury and my ankle, and I tried to just rest up. But as I started getting back into things, my knee was still bothering me. So I decided to come back up to George Mason actually and run into Dr. Can't think of his name as of right now, but he's been a doctor at Mason for the longest. Like he always took care of us. And yep, get an X-ray, and that was August 8th when I got the X-ray, and I was getting surgery August 9th. I literally had he was like, Cam, I don't know how you continue to play on this for that long. Like, this looks terrible. If you don't get this done ASAP, your career could be over. So the next day I was right back in there having surgery done, and I ended up staying with Miss Debbie for a little bit, recovering and just getting myself back together. They said it was going to be a 6-month wait. Took the 6 months, felt in great shape. I was bigger, stronger, moving around, pretty much at almost 100%. And then, I'm getting the flu, and all my recovery disappeared, lost all of it. At the time where actually a EuroLeague team was actually calling me to come out there and just get myself prepared and ready to go to play with them. And then when I ended up calling them, telling that I got the flu and lost over 10 pounds and all the recovery I had, I couldn't run anymore. Like, they ended up canceling that offer and I had to start all over. Next thing you know, a whole year went by, and anytime you have a surgery or you take a year off, not many teams are familiar with you or not willing to take the risk of bring you on. So the reason why I went back to another German team, because that was the team that I was most familiar.
So after Germany, you wind up going to Romania. Take us through your stint in Romania.
So Romania was going to be really life-changing. All my other years that I was overseas, the first 3 years, was always playing the 2 guard and playing the backup point guard. But the deal I had signed to go to Romania was to play point guard and maybe a backup shooting guard. So the roles was definitely going to change for me. I also was in the position of possibly trying to get the Romanian passport and be able to play with the Romanian national team. And I can sit there and tell you Romania was probably one of the best places I ended up finding myself at. I was getting along with the guys really well. My surroundings was really well. My surroundings was, exciting. And, I was just really excited about the whole situation I was in. Like, my contract was just perfect. And, my agent at the time was good as well, because I ended up switching agents after I left Lithuania. And, I ended up going with Chet Irvin, and great guy, man. Like, a guy that always made sure that I was in the best situation I possibly can be in. And, anytime I ever had issues, I could call him, and he was always willing to pick up. If he couldn't pick up, he'd send me a quick text message and let me know that he'll call me back soon. So that was always good, man. I love that dude to death. And he really made my career playing ball much easier for sure. And that's how I ended up getting myself in this Romania situation where I can possibly get the passport. And one thing a lot of people might not be aware of, once you can get a passport from another country, it changes everything. Because when you're playing in certain countries, there's only allowed certain Americans per team. And some countries, they allow, 5+. Like Israel, there's 5 or more allowed on Israel, or Americans allowed on each team. While Lithuania and Germany, there's only 2 or 3 allowed on each team. So, and that all changed throughout wherever you were. So that passport could have been huge. And sure enough, I performed at the level I don't think you can complain at. At the time I was playing in Romania, I was top 5 in scoring, top 5 in assists. My team was second in the league in and standings. And I just feel like with a year like that, there's not much more you can ask for. Well, we went on break, came back from break, and things got a little bumpy. We had a little rough time where we started losing some games we shouldn't have lost. You can tell that the vibe between the team wasn't the same. Like people was kind of standoffish, wasn't really communicating with each other. But that's any team. Every team where you go through losses, you're going to have some moments where you find your players pulling apart. But that's just what a team is about. Sometimes you're going to have ups, sometimes you're going to have downs, and you got to find a way to get back to being as one unit. But at this particular time, we couldn't find it. And to the point where they really started to panic. GM, coaches, and all them really started to panic. But still, even with these few games that we ended up losing, we were still in second place the entire time. Like at the time when we started losing these games, we was like 12-2, while the team in first place was 12-1. And then we ended up like 12-5, and we still was in second place with like 2 games ahead. So I didn't understand what was such the big deal for them to start panicking the way they were, but I guess you just never know how the season could pair out. So they were just upset that we were losing games we shouldn't have. Well, things got even more hectic where one game, me and one of my teammates kind of got in a little scuffle, not a fight, but like just talking back to each other, arguing back and forth. And one of the GMs stepped in like, hey, you need to stop. Y'all need to stop fighting, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're on the bench. Stay out of this. Like, this is between me and him. Like, we're fine. We ain't fighting. We just discussing, having a conversation. Well, he took that to the heart, and he took that real personally to the point where I ended up getting kicked off the team. And sure enough, getting kicked off the team, passport and all that's gone. Everything is gone. My whole life changed. Now I'm looking at myself like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I just got kicked off a team. How everybody else going to look at this? Like, what kind of guy is this? What kind of personality does it have? And I've never been that person. Like, I mean, I've always been a guy that's always trying to make sure his teammates is playing at their best level, who's looking for his teammates to do their best, and not always looking for the spotlight. Like, I don't need the spotlight. I just want the spotlight as a team, not individually. So for these comments and, just disrespect to come towards me after this moment, I was in fear. Like, I was in shock, didn't know what to do. And I really wasn't even aware of it at the exact time it happened, because my agent ended up calling me like a week after this even occurred. And he was like, is everything all right over there? I'm like, what you mean? He was like, well, how has the team or the coaches been acting towards you? I'm like, well, I mean, everything's been fine. Like, we've been practicing all week, had weight room all week. I actually just came back from weight room, and he was like, so you went to practice and everything this morning too? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, do y'all have practice this evening? I was like, yes. He said, don't go. Why not? He was like, well, apparently you've been released. It's like, excuse me? And he's like, yeah, you've been released. And I'm like, released for what? And he's like, I don't know. I'm trying to talk to the guys right now and find out what's going on. Well, apparently the GM was sitting there saying I put my hands on him, and I was completely disrespectful to him. And I'm like, you can ask all my teammates and even see it on video. None of that ever occurred. Like, me and my teammates were talking to each other. I never put my hands on him. So all these false accusations came up, and there was nothing I could do about it. So, I went home, kind of prayed, cleared my head. And at this point, I've been through a lot in my career. I had a knee surgery. I had a team literally say they don't want me to come back, all off of, again, false accusations. And I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't even want to play ball anymore. Like, this is stressful. This is a lot. It's a cutthroat world. Like, they can cut you at any moment and bring in somebody else, younger, cheaper, however they want to look at it, and just think you're just another dime in a dozen. So next thing you know, one of my prayers was, the only way I'm gonna continue playing basketball is if I can end up in a really warm country. It's the only way, because out of all the countries I've been at, this cold, I think, just brought a lot of negative energy towards myself. And I just felt like the sun will literally just make you glow a little differently. And at this time, during this year, we just played in Israel too for FIBA Cup. We had played in Israel, and I loved it when I went there. Like, it was amazing, super hot, warm beaches all around the area, just like it is back home here in Florida. So one of my prayers was if I can go play in Israel, I'll do it. Well, next thing you know, I'm getting a call from Daryl Monroe, and he's like, "Yo, hey, I just talked to the coach at Maccabi Rishon, the team I played on last year, and he was saying if I had your contact information to go out there and play." And I was like, "You're not serious?" And he's like, "No, I'm dead serious. They want you to go out there and play with them." And I was like, "No way." He was like, "Why are you saying it like that?" I was like, "Man, I just prayed talking about if I can go play in Israel, that's the only way I'm gonna continue." 2 weeks later, I was flying out to Israel to continue playing my season out there.
Oof, that's fortunate. And I see we got Tony back.
After a lot of adversity, you end up in a place that you actually wanted to play.
Exactly.
And the place where you eventually ended your career, more or less. You were in two separate teams in Maccabi. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Rishon and Ashdod.
So tell us about your time there. You won the Israeli League and the MVP in 2018, probably your best season as a pro. So talk to us about that time there, the wrapping it up for your time overseas.
All right. Well, the first year going to Rishon, again, just a huge adjustment. Again, going to a place that I wanted to actually play at. Warm all year round. 6 Americans per team, maybe 5, depending on the year. And then everybody spoke English, good English at that. And we also had, weekends where you had Shabbat Shalom, and that was able to allow us to, have a little time off, which you didn't really get in any other countries. And we also only practiced for the most part once a week in Israel compared to 2 days every day. Or excuse me, once a day in Israel compared to 2 days every time in every other country. So just the load of, physically and mentally, I just wasn't wore out. I wasn't tired on a consistent basis. And I'm kind of glad that really happened because Israel's speed level is completely higher and faster than any other country I've ever been in. And I guess the warmth of everything around you, including being on that court, is definitely something you want to have as much energy as possible before going into that game or practice or however you want to talk about it. But again, when it comes to the culture shock, people in Israel alone, really made me feel at home. We had families on Shabbat literally asked if we want to come over there and have dinner, all Americans. And, that itself, tells a lot, being brought into another family and feel like one of their own when you're so far away from your own is, very heartwarming. Finding yourself in a position like that, you might think, especially here in America, you won't see people really asking other people to come to the house. Yeah, y'all can come to the house. That's fine. Come eat with us. Not too often, unless they really know you or somebody else in the family really knows you. But these people, without ever really meeting me in person, just watching my game, will literally be like, "You're definitely more than welcome to come to my house and eat. We got plenty of food and we'll love to have you." It was just a great feeling and made things very easy for anybody that played overseas. It just really made you feel at home. And then first year, we lost in the semifinals to Jerusalem, I believe that year. We lost in the semifinals. And then I ended up going to Ashdod my following season, where I played with Brad Greenberg, the brother of Seth Greenberg, going back into my story earlier.
Everything comes full circle.
Right, which was very interesting because that was just, like you said, a full circle and just brought a lot of laughter. And we discussed that a few times too while I was playing with him. But another good year, and having an American coach, made things a little easier too because, just the style of play was very similar to, playing back in college and all that type of stuff. And that was, another year of success. We finished very high, playing on a program at that level who hasn't, really showed their real potential, but have a group of guys like us who came in and just, dominated the league. there was times like we beat Maccabi Tel Aviv and, Jerusalem. We beat all those teams that year, and they really haven't ever done that. So that was exciting to pull that off and, leave that on their belt. And just again, another season that kind of just spun around and went by, and we ended up losing in the second round of playoffs to the team that ended up making it to the championship game. So again, there's always one of those teams that I end up losing to that won the championship or lost in the championship. So I guess I can't be too upset with how that ended. And then my final year, by sure the most adversity, but at the same time, my best season of not only professionally, but my career in general. Just how much I had to overcome and lead a team in that level and fight, some of the things that we had to deal with within the program. A lot of people might not be aware of it unless you was in Israel. There a lot of things went down with the coaches and me, where we just really didn't get along. Not to the point where I could say there was hate. It was just more of a lack of understanding. Like I had teammates literally coming to me every day or complaining in the locker room just how tired and how exhausted they were. And we had a coach that literally, I felt like just had a military lifestyle. I don't know if it was a military thing for him or not, but like we was practicing twice a day, 3-hour practices. It's the first time I ever practiced twice a day in Israel. And it was only with him. No other teams could talk. You could talk to all the players on every other team, and they never went through that same stuff we went through. Like they couldn't believe the practice schedules that we had and how hard we was being ran. Everybody was in shock. They couldn't believe it. To the point where I actually went on strike. Like I just literally said I can't take it anymore, and I told the coach like, I'm not going to continue to practice and play for you if you're going to continue to push us like this, because we're going to lose. I can guarantee you our guys' legs is just not going to be there. And not only physically, if this keep going on, mentally is going to be the next thing. Once you lose us mentally, it's over. Like the season is done. You can't get guys back from mentally being destroyed. Like physically, yes, you can recover, take some rest, take breaks, and you'll be fine. And mentally, it takes a lot more than just a break to get back from that. Like, I mean, even when I came all the way home for a week and then went back, still mentally, I was just stressed out and frustrated and fearful of what the rest of the season was going to hold. But the strike lasted a good week. I didn't go to practice all week. I didn't go to one of our games that we ended up having playing against the number one team at the time. I didn't even go to that. And I had a meeting with the coaches and the GM and the president afterwards just to discuss what's actually been going on. Well, during that meeting, it went south very quickly. The coach was asking me to apologize while I was asking him to do the same thing, and he wouldn't. And like, do you want me to apologize for how I might have handled it? Yes. But am I going to apologize for why I did it? No, because I felt like in my right mind, I was trying to lead by example what we were really dealing with. And he just didn't seem to understand that. Like he literally would just disregard anything we said to him about how we felt, what we believe would work best for us. And he didn't want to hear it. And I just couldn't put up with it. So I ended up during that conversation with the whole, staff, they literally got to the point where I ended up walking out of the meeting, just storming out and telling them like, I want to go. Just give me my ticket and I'll go home now. I don't even want to be here. Just like that. And I walked off. And they told me, no, wait. Like, we didn't expect that meeting to go like that. We was hoping that we could come to agreement and solve things. But I was like, well, with a guy like that, that's not happening. Like, you guys all know it. Y'all even said it yourself. He's a very hard guy to communicate with. And for the staff, for the president, for the GM, all y'all to notice that and say the same thing, why is he still here then? Nobody can communicate with this guy. This guy's belief is only his belief. And for y'all to sit there and still allow that and accept that, I just don't understand how y'all expect us to go anywhere with this team. So eventually we went home for break and they told us all, like, we'll make a decision during your break and let you know what happens. So I packed all my stuff, took everything home with me just to be on the safe side. And they end up posting stuff on Instagram showing that they had released the coach. And then they released some players. It wasn't me, but some other players. And I'm like, wow. Well, you would think in a good note, that'll be good. Well, at the same time, oh man, my social media was getting blown up. Like, I mean, I had people attacking me left and right, talking so bad about me. Cameron's a selfish player, selfish person, individual that's so negative, like just completely bashing me. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, I was surprised. And on social media, I didn't want to tell anybody, the truth. I didn't want to really explain myself over social media because it ain't the same. So I ended up coming back because they asked me to come back. I ended up coming back. They got a new coach, and everything started to change around a little bit. Like, you can definitely see within the team, their mindsets was motivated to get back to really working hard and getting to playing at the level we all knew we could. We end up then adding Daryl Monroe, and that was a game changer because me and Daryl played in college, so we already knew how to get along with one another. And having a big man and a point guard / shooting guard be able to communicate with each other and bring the rest of the team together because they already knew how to play with one another. You having a leader is one thing, but having two of them is very hard to beat. And sure enough, we went on a winning streak the moment he got there. Like, the bond me and him had, leading everybody else, motivating everybody else to play better and play at their best, just really made us, play at the level that the team was always expected to play at. And, we had fans booing us at some point where I ended up going in the stands and talking to the fans, telling them, look, don't you boo us. Like, let us on the court do that. Let me handle the team. But the last thing I need is y'all booing us because we already at a low point. If y'all booing us too, it puts more negativity into our mindsets. We don't need that. Let me handle that, and I promise y'all things will turn around. Like, again, a leadership level of trying to control your team when you're actually talking to the staff, the president, the GM, and the fans, that's a lot for one person, you think. Like, you just couldn't imagine somebody doing that, or you couldn't imagine why they would even do that. And like I said earlier, like, that was my best year. That year finished out with me, getting MVP of the playoffs and us losing in the championship game after us being on the verge of not even making the playoffs. So at the end of the year, it was going into trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Was I going to continue to play ball, or was I going to let it go? Again, out of all the adversity that I went through, I was at a point where now it's just like, I think it's going to be time to hang up the shoes. And, everybody said I would regret it. I had my agent constantly telling me, like, don't do that. This is going to be a game changer. You finished the year out great. You're going to get all the offers you're looking for. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I did have a great year. I did finish everything out amazingly, even after all the adversity. Maybe I would get the look that I'm looking for. And I got some offers, not the offers I was really looking for, but close to it. And my last offer was to actually go and play in Greece on a EuroCup team and actually get paid almost double the amount of money I was actually making. And mentally, I didn't want it. I didn't want it. And at that point, when I realized I didn't want it, and I was going to get an offer of double the amount I was already making, I knew that the love of the game was gone. Like, I just knew I just didn't have anything else in me to leave on the court anymore. So I ended up calling it quits.